Hello and welcome to the Feeling Good podcast. I am your host, Fabrice, and joining me here in the Murrieta studios is Dr. David Burns. Hi, David.
Hi, Fabrice.
Dr. David Burns has been a pioneer in the development of cognitive therapy, and he is the creator of the new team therapy. He is the author of Feeling Good, which has sold over 5 million copies in the United States and has been translated into over 20 languages. He is an emeritus adjunct clinical professor of psychiatry at the Stanford University School of Medicine. This is episode 38 of the Feeling Good podcast, and today is another Ask David podcast. And we have an email here from Daisy. And here's what Daisy has to say. She says that my husband and I can't have a child and have failed several rounds of expensive fertility treatment. This has been a very painful situation that has led to much anxiety and depression. However, the times I have coped the best is when I have been able to change my thinking about it. For example, I have come to see that there are many aspects of my life I can enjoy without children. I've also been able to challenge a persistent thought in my brain that having children is the only way to live a satisfying life. The times that I find it most difficult to challenge these negative thoughts is when I talk to my well-meaning friends and family. They see our situation as hugely tragic and often urge us to continue with treatment even though I'm not sure that I want to. They want us to continue because they don't believe themselves that it is possible to be happy without a child. From what I've read on infertility websites and the support groups I've visited, it seems that many people believe that one ought to feel very depressed in this situation. And if you don't, then there's something odd about you. Maybe you are in denial. After being exposed to this viewpoint, I often fall back into the old way of thinking and get very depressed. Perhaps the thought in my head is, if most other people think this way about a situation, it must be true. This is all a roundabout way of asking, to what degree do you think society at large seems to endorse unhelpful ways of thinking? Certainly, the news tends to be a reflection of negative thinking on a mass scale. Trying to do this hard work of changing one's unhelpful thoughts sometimes seems impossible in the face of our collective beliefs. There are many young people who grow up believing that their worth is determined by what they look like or what they achieve because of what they see on TV. Those messages bombard them on a daily basis. I worry that if I'm happy in the midst of what other people see as a huge tragedy, then I will be seen by others as some kind of weirdo. I'm curious what your thoughts are about this.
Well, thank you, Daisy, for that fabulous question, because it really goes to the heart of the type of work that we do with Team CBT. We'll go in whatever direction you want, Fabrice, and I have a couple of pretty good stories on this. But one issue is that overcoming depression involves acceptance. And there's two types of acceptance we've probably referred to on previous podcasts. One is internal acceptance, and the other is external acceptance. Mm-hmm. And what this means is that because of our society, we have these beliefs of what we need in order to feel happy and fulfilled. And I call them, and it's a word that Aaron Beck made up, self-defeating beliefs. Albert Ellis, the New York guy who started a lot of this in the 1950s and 60s. He was really a neat guy, kind of a wild, crazy man, but he called them irrational beliefs.
Yeah.
And we're going to have some podcasts on how to find out what your own self-defeating beliefs are, and we're going to illustrate it with some of the uncovering techniques that I've developed. We're going to record them soon, actually.
In fact, I wanted to mention, for a future podcast, we're going to do a series here on uncovering techniques and also on interpersonal issues like relationships and so on.
Oh, yeah, we've got so much good stuff coming up, but some of the self-defeating beliefs, and I'll be posting a list of them on the upcoming podcast on the individual downward arrow technique, but there are things like, to be a worthwhile human being, I need substance X. And then substance X could be love or approval or great achievement or being real popular or being real good looking. So the way the belief goes is to be a worthwhile human being, or my worth as a human being depends on my achievements and productivity.
Yeah.
Or I must be loved to feel happy and fulfilled, or I need everyone's approval to be worthwhile. Or in this Daisy's case, I need a baby to feel happy and fulfilled, or some external thing. And so the external non-acceptance is where we're saying, until I get that baby, I'm gonna be miserable. I need this thing. And then the internal non-acceptance is I refuse to accept my flawed nature. I have to be special. I have to try
acceptance of oneself.
Yeah, and as opposed to the perfectionism that leads to depression and anxiety. So this is really a very crucial theme, and we see these messages all the time, even in advertising. For example, the ads for the Lexus is the relentless pursuit of perfection.
Yeah, and they piggyback on our sense of lack.
Yes, that's right. And the idea is if only you had enough money to buy a Lexus, you'd be in some very, very joyous kind of
forever.
Experience. Yeah, forever. And then Barbara Streisand, bless her heart, sings, people who need people are the luckiest people in the world, as if this need for love and getting love is the answer to everything. And we could talk about this theme quite a bit, but to give a quick answer, Daisy, I believe that these are false beliefs, that we don't need achievement to be happy and fulfilled, and
or a child,
or a child, or whatever. I treated a student who came to me because of her horrific depression. Let's say she was an undergraduate there at the a graduate at the University of Pennsylvania, and she'd had like 20 years of failed therapy for depression, and she was an older student, and she came to me and said that she was hopeless and that it would be impossible to recover from depression because she'd had 20 years of failed therapy, and also she was kind of an expert in research in OBGYN and had come to the conclusion that she would never be able to have a baby. And also that she felt she needed love and a baby to feel happy and fulfilled, but she had no husband. She had no baby, and she was pretty convinced that she would be depressed forever. Well, without going into the details of the treatment, although I botched up the first session with her, and I thought it was a great session, and she gave me horrible ratings on empathy and helpfulness, because I hadn't done enough warmth and empathy and agenda setting, which I was kind of embarrassed and ashamed of that I'd done such a bad job. But when she came back the next time, we talked it over, and I changed my strategy.
On a scale of 0 to 100, how embarrassed and ashamed were you?
About 90. Because
what were your thoughts?
I was telling myself I screwed up, I should have done better, I'm a failure, she'll lose respect for me. And I knew she had some interest in medicine and psychiatry, as as well. And so I was, trying to impress her and show her, how...
That's where the problem starts.
Exactly. Narcissism. I've got plenty of it. It's a cause of most of my problems, but not all. I have other faults as well, but that's certainly one of them. At any rate, the second time she came back, and we sat down for a 2-hour session, and I corrected those errors and added more warmth, and she absolutely blew things out of the water, and her depression completely disappeared in that session. And then we had a couple more sessions, but there really wasn't anything left to do. She'd found happiness for the first time in her life, and we did relapse prevention, and she was on her way. But I didn't hear from her until about maybe a year later, and then she said, "I thought you might want some follow up," and she said, "I'm even happier today than the day I finished therapy, if you can believe it, and take a look at the attached photos and you'll see what I mean." And the first photo was her holding her baby in her arms. Uh-huh. And it had the subtitle, "Dr. Burns, you were right. Sometimes hopelessness is a distortion." And then the next was her picture of her marriage, and it was such a beautiful thing. And then I went into the residence room the next day at the Penn Medical School, where the residents kind of hang out, and when they're, it's like a lounge type of thing. And I went in there looking for a student to supervise, and she was standing there with her baby and her husband, and she was applying to our psychiatric residency program.
All right.
And she said, to her baby, "This is Dr. Burns. You better thank him for your existence." But so she kind of had her cake and was able to have her cake and eat it too, once she gave up the idea that she needed this baby to feel happy, and she found her recovery, her happiness and joy. Then
she could be happy without the baby, and then she had the baby.
That's how I came into existence too, because my parents couldn't have children, and so they finally gave up and adopted three children, and then suddenly I came along.
You bought that, yeah.
But at any rate, we have these messages from society that we need.
Yeah, that's the other part, because it sounds from Daisy's email that she has come to some understanding that she doesn't need that child in order for her to be happy. But there's this bombardment of messages from her entourage.
That's right.
I'm thinking about, like in the harm reduction field, they say if you want to stay off the bottle, stop hanging out with your alcoholic friends.
Yeah, right.
The problem here is our entire society is alcoholic when it comes to,
our needs.
The needs, yes. And
our
so
need
how
for love,
how do we deal with that?
Needs for achievement. There's this fantastic way to deal with that, and Fabrice will now describe what it is. It's part of our work in team therapy is helping people distinguish wants from needs, and we could probably talk about 20 different techniques that the listener could be using. I give another quick story on this thing if you want, and this may seem superficial, and if so, I apologize ahead of time, but we do get kind of hypnotized in thinking we need something.
Right.
Like we need achievement,
that's what's happening,
or we need John's love, and if he rejects us, or it's the end of life, the end of hope. And
we
again,
need the Lexus.
We need the Lexus. When I was a psychiatric resident, I used to collect. It was kind of a passing thing with me, but I got temporarily very excited about collecting world paper money. That's like a coin collector.
Yeah.
But it's their banknotes instead.
Right.
And they were just this was this, passing hobby I had for a short period of time, but I got very excited about it, and I went to this it was kind of a coin and paper money show, and there were dealers there that had all these beautiful rare coins and banknotes from all different countries.
Right.
And there was a fellow, Larry someone or other, he was a dealer from Albuquerque, and he had this uncut sheet of paper money from the Virgin Islands, St. Thomas. And it was from around the 1850s, and there were 3 $500 bills and a $1,000 bill that were all, they hadn't been cut yet, just as they were printed at the printer, 150 years earlier. Right. And they were very beautiful and seemed extraordinarily rare. And I looked at it and I kind of got hypnotized. And I thought, my gosh, this is the most fantastic thing in the world. This is better than the Hope Diamond, at the Smithsonian. But it wasn't for sale. He was just kind of proudly displaying it. And so I kind of had to let it go and move on with my life. But I kept thinking about that, and I would go into bed at night. I think, oh wow, if someone could own something like that you'd be so happy, and unbelievable. You'd have one of the rarest, most beautiful things in the world. Well, it came up for auction about a year later. This Larry Parker was his name, and he sold he gave his collection to a really nice dealer from L.A. named Gary Snover, and he said, Gary, I want you to auction, my inventory, my collection. And so Gary put out this auction and a little catalog. It was kind of an informal thing, and here was this uncut sheet of banknotes from the U.S. Virgin Islands. Oh my gosh, here's my chance to get these. I might have to borrow money from the bank, but maybe I could stretch and use some credit or have a chance to get it. And so the auction was going to close on a Sunday afternoon, and I knew this Gary Snover was a really nice guy, so I called him to give my phone bid just before the auction closed, and it was up to about $1,700 bidding on this thing. And I said to Gary, I said, I've had my heart set on this thing for more than a year. How much will I have to bid to make sure I've got the winning bid now? We're 5 minutes before the close of the auction. And Gary said, David, you're not going to succeed at that. He says, no matter how much you bid, you can't win this lot. And I said, why not? And he says, because you're bidding against the wealthiest man in the Caribbean. And he lives in St. Thomas. And he's determined to buy this lot. And he gave me an unrestricted bid. He just told me, I don't care if someone bids $1 million, bid more. He says, you can bid $2,000, you can bid $3,000, but you're just wasting your time.
Okay.
And my heart broke. And so I didn't put in a bid, and for 3 or 4 days I was just thinking, oh my gosh, and I'll never own this thing now. And it just felt so real that I needed that to feel special, to feel happy and worthwhile. And all of a sudden it was 3 or 4 days later, and I started noticing, hey, I'm happy again, and I don't have that thing. Maybe I didn't really need it. Maybe I wanted it. And then I started thinking, there's a lot of other cool things that I could, if I save up a little money and spend $300-400, I could probably get some pretty cool items. And I forgot all about it. And then the punchline was that then 30 years later, a whole bunch of them were found. And it turned out to be a reprint, and you could buy them easily. And they started coming up for auction, like for $300-400, and then I didn't even want one.
Right.
And it really, and you can say it's superficial, but it taught me something that we get hypnotized into thinking, I need something. Addictions are also on that basis. I need to eat this food right now. I need to drink this alcohol.
I don't think it's superficial at all. There's no actual ranking in how we need something. We can need something that seems trivial, but we need it so much, feel like we're needing it so much that it's a constant obsession.
Yeah, right.
What I'm curious about is, you said that a few days later you noticed you were happy and you still didn't have that thing. But I'm wondering, during that year between the first time you saw it and the time when you bid on it, were there times when you were not thinking about it?
Most of the time, I just wasn't thinking about it.
And during those times, weren't you happy?
Absolutely, totally
happy. So you
happy.
were only unhappy when you thought about it.
Yeah, and told myself I need that thing.
Right.
And
So you had to sort of maintain and entertain that thought, otherwise it would just by itself drop and leave you happy.
Yeah, and there's a form of therapy based on this called cognitive therapy. All of our feelings are created by our thoughts and not by reality, but not by what we have or don't have, and we tell ourselves that we have to be great achievers, and if I was just like Bill Gates and had all these billions, and those are the beautiful people, those are the really happy people.
Yeah. And the moment you start focusing on something else, this is all gone.
Yeah. I told you a story earlier about Tim Beck and this fellow who he ran into who was deliriously happy.
Tim Beck?
Yeah, Aaron Beck. We called him
Beck.
Tim Beck.
That
was his nickname.
I didn't know that. Okay.
And when I was first going to his seminars, we were talking about, do we need love to be happy? Do we need achievement to feel happy and fulfilled?
What do we need for happiness?
Yeah, and he said that he and his wife had gone to a jazz club the night before to see some, jazz music, kind of a nightclub type of thing. And that there was a fellow seated in the table next to them who was alone. And he seemed to be incredibly happy and kind of dancing around and listening to music, and he was just glowing with joy. And so Dr. Beck asked him, you seem like a really happy person. And the fellow said, oh, I'm probably the happiest person in Philadelphia. And then Beck asked him, well, why? Why are you so happy? And he said, oh, I got an important promotion at work today. Beck said, oh, well, that's great. What kind of work do you do? And he said, oh, I work in a bakery. And Beck said, well, what promotion did you get? And he says, well, I've been working there for 35 years, and my job has been to bake the donuts in the back room. And then today they told me I would have a promotion and that I would be allowed to take the donuts up and arrange them in the cases, where the customers come in.
Big promotion,
yeah. And he was just so proud and excited about this, and it was a story that really touched me, because here's this fellow, and he probably has maybe a 80 or 75 IQ, someone with very marginal intellectual functioning, and I think he was living alone, had no wife or family, and yet, because of the way he was thinking about what life had given him, his thoughts were making him deliriously happy. And then I've had other people who have come to me. I've treated people of great fame and great wealth who like the beautiful people who have all of these things. They have achievement, they have fame, and yet they're very
unhappy,
miserably unhappy because of the negative messages they're giving themselves.
Yeah, and sometimes receiving from others. It's like this baker person had not been hypnotized by the message from society.
Exactly.
And I think that may be the key point here, to not let ourselves be hypnotized either by others or by ourselves.
Yeah. And realizing that it's your thoughts that create your moods, and if you have some of these self-defeating beliefs, and you change those self-defeating beliefs, you're changing your philosophy on a deep level, and this can not only change the way you feel, but also not set you up for painful mood swings in the future. And we'll have some future podcasts not only on how each listener can find out what your own self-defeating beliefs are, but also some techniques to change these self-defeating beliefs, so you're not trapped by the expectations of society.
Yeah, so a lot of interesting techniques coming up. Well, I hope this answers Daisy's question, and I want to thank you for another great podcast.
Yes, and I want to thank Daisy for not only your good question, but your courage. In my opinion, and Fabrice's opinion, you're absolutely on the right track.
I think so too. All right, great.
This has been another episode of the Feeling Good podcast.
For more information, visit Dr. Burns' website at feelinggood.com, where you will find the show notes for this podcast under the blog page, and where you can leave your comments and questions. The website has an abundance of resources for therapists as well as non-therapists, including books, workshops, a list of online training groups around the world, and much more. Theme music is Gypsy Jazz in Paris, 1935, composed and performed by Brett Van Donzel. I am your host, Fabrice Nye, and I invite you to join us next time for another episode of the Feeling Good podcast.